Welcome to episode 128 of the Half Point Per podcast. I'm your host, Evan Riggs, joined as always by my co-host, Dalton Willie. No producer Johnny Pham this week. He is in New York City, becoming alarmingly East Coast at just a rapid pace right now, Dalton.
The worst time zone on the face of this planet, without a doubt. Football ending at sometimes midnight. Can't do that. Football starting at 1. See, that's how bad it is. I don't know what time it is there. Terrible choice. Terrible choice being there for as long as he is. New York City is scummy. West Coast, best coast.
It's ironic that as you were saying that, your internet flickered like at the very beginning, but we're good now. You're back. You're stable. I think we're good. I was walking home from work today. I just felt like sharing this because I saw something that I can't say I've ever seen before in my life. And when I say walking home from work, I mean walking to my car from work. And I was walking down some stairs on KU's campus, heard kind of a loud noise, looked up, saw what I think was a hawk, extremely big bird. And it was like maybe 10 feet over my head, maybe flying, carrying a squirrel, a live squirrel. And I like just one of the more wild things I've ever seen that close up.
That is absolutely wild. I wanted to actually share this to let all of our listeners know that I am about that live. But this is a bag of candy corn.
No. Oh, my God.
And if you are a candy corn aficionado, as I am, they are $1 at several price shoppers across the Kansas City metro.
I saw candy corn at my local Ace Hardware over the weekend. Thought of you as I saw that. They were up in the front of the store as if somebody would just like pick that up, go there and buy whatever, paint or whatever you need to buy at Ace right now, filters, and just throw in a bag of candy corn. Why not? Sure, yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. Ace Hardware candy corn does not sound delightful to me.
All right, and on that note, something that does sound delightful after 2 weeks of being off, which thank you guys for the patience on that one. We are back with playoff strategies this week. We were going to talk about Circle of Trust last week. I want you all to know that I was going to tell you, don't fully trust Calvin Ridley yet. What does he do? Scores 5 points. We'll see. Probably without Trevor Lawrence, he'll score 15 points against the Browns because his season has been that nonsensical this year. We're going to talk some playoff strategies, and we're going to close it out with some dynasty values, look a little bit ahead into the future on a handful of guys, both positively and negatively maybe on some of these guys. And then maybe if we have some time, Dalton, we will take a look at the old home league, see what that playoff chase is looking like, because it is quite wild, to say the least, for the last 2 or 3 playoff spots in that league. But first, we will start with some playoff strategies, and I will let you take the lead here, Dalton. What is your first playoff strategy, or just kind of playoff? I guess we'll just stick with strategy. What's your first playoff strategy you want the people to know about?
Well, I only did 2 here because I saw 2 on our trophy. So I'm just going to knock those 2 out of the way that were on our thumbnail. Starting off quick and easy. Roster defenses ahead of time.
Yep.
If you're in a defensive league, it's pretty simple. You look at the matchups, you know who's going to be the candy matchups. Whoever plays the New England Patriots, they have 10 total points the last month.
I was going to say they've scored 13 points the last 3 games, I think, or something like that. So 10 total points has to be a little bit off. But yeah, I think 13 in the last 3. Got shut out by the Chargers, which I didn't know was possible.
Yeah, and they haven't had a passing touchdown since October. So it's just not looking up there. Yeah, their last 3-point totals are 6, 10, and 0. So
and Ramondre Stevenson is hurt, by the way.
Yeah, so Ezekiel Elliott is their starting running back. Do with that with what you will. But yeah, pretty simple. Go out there and find your playoff weeks, what defenses you want, roster them now, drop those backup wide receivers that have no starting value. Don't
Yep.
worry about those guys on bye weeks anymore.
Backup tight ends too.
Yeah, backup tight ends for sure. So I want to get that one out of the way because that's a pretty rudimentary one. I think we talk about it every year.
Yep, and that was my first one too, but it was defenses, and it was also mine was just rethink your roster construction. Defenses and running backs, especially like you said with the defenses, though, look ahead at the defensive schedules, pick up a defense maybe a week ahead. I'm sure in 90% of leagues, the Chiefs defense did not get dropped, but they play Buffalo this week, so if somebody can only hold one defense, they have to get in. They saw what the Chiefs defense just did in primetime last week. It was not good. Perhaps that defense will be on the waiver wire. You can pick them up, and you can have a very juicy Patriots matchup, like you just said, and your playoffs if they're out there. But there are others, like the Falcons get the Panthers the first week of the playoffs. Pay attention to who the Giants play, who the Jets play. Like, there is a lot of low-hanging fruit out there.
Well, even the Ravens just came off of a bye. I mean, their defense might be available, and I think they're like the second-ranked defense in fantasy right now, and they get the Rams. I don't pick up the Ravens.
I was going to say
they get the Rams, Jacksonville, the Niners, Miami.
Although if Jacksonville does not have Trevor Lawrence back by then, that could be kind of sneaky. Okay,
that is true. But approach that at your own discretion. Mm-hmm. I would not recommend trusting that against Miami, at least.
Yeah, and then the second part of this roster construction thing for me is, early in the season, I'm doing everything I can to build that juggernaut team. I am stashing high upside receivers like the Jameson Williams that we talked about a month or so ago, looking at, taking shots on backup tight ends, even if I have a deeper league, deeper rosters, and hoping to kind of catch fire there if I have a tight end who is a streamer, maybe even a quarterback. Maybe I've got more than one quarterback on the team. I'm shedding that fat, and I am looking at those handcuff running backs. You have Zeke, which I know, I don't want to start Zeke. If you're in a bad spot, though, you can start him and just pray that they get inside the 5-yard line, because Zeke could be the running back 26. And you may, in these leagues where you have to start multiple flexes or something, that is definitely of value. But then you have guys like Tajay Spears, who we'll talk about in Dynasty, but one of the top handcuffs, probably not out there, probably would have to be on your team already, but maybe he is. Ty Chandler, Zach Moss before this week would have been kind of that guy, but he is the example as to why you do this, because you can. I know it didn't work out from a point standpoint, but I think his expected points were like
second in the NFL.
Yeah, second in the NFL. So he should have had bigger games. He's had bigger games. He probably will have bigger games if he's the starter for any further length of time. But then you have guys who I think you can probably go pluck off waivers right now. Elijah Mitchell, you want to get that Niners backup. Rico Dowdle, Roshan Johnson, Dearness Johnson. I think he's the guy you want in Jacksonville. Maybe Jerick McKinnon was dropped in your league due to injury, due to him just not producing. He's a guy that, think about how many leagues he won last year, and just think about
Jordan Mason.
Jordan Mason. Another guy too. Just think about every year these random names that they didn't do a thing for the first 13, 14 weeks, and then one injury later, and they are in the starting lineup of a lot of teams on championship week. And you're just hunting for that type of guy right now.
I've won championships on the backs of Antonio Gibson and Damian Harris. So believe me, and Leonard Fournette. I mean,
and Tony Pollard back before Tony Pollard was the starter, back when he was not a fantasy starter.
Yeah. And I mean, even today, Breece Hall didn't practice with an ankle injury. I don't really advise any of them, but Michael Carter in Arizona has looked really good so far.
Yeah.
That one would be an exciting player I'd pick up.
He's better than Dalvin Cook. What are we doing, Jets?
It's a terrible franchise. They're being run so poorly. Even he might be available, but Dameon Pierce in Houston, that one's working back into a timeshare, and it's not like Devin Singletary is built to be a tank. But that does kind of lead into my next point. And it's don't look at season long production anymore. You got to start shortening the windows on like Fantasy Pros or whatever you use. Some
Yep.
good examples I looked at. Amari Cooper right now is wide receiver 32. That would probably slot him in as your wide receiver 2, 3. Over the last 3 games, he's wide receiver 61. He has terrible point outings. It looks like Joe Flacco and the Elijah Moore connection is a real thing for whatever it's worth. And it's been very unwell for Amari Cooper's outings recently. Jordan Addison, Josh Downs, 2 rookies who got hot in the middle of the season who have not been so hot lately. If you're looking at season long, they look really startable. If you look at their last couple games, they really don't look like players you want to be rostering or starting for that matter. Same thing with players like Jacoby Myers, who has been off and on.
Yeah, I'm looking at the rankings right now. George Pickens is in half point. He is wide receiver 32, Cooper 31 on the list I'm looking at. He fits that bill, I think, as well.
Yeah,
with Trubisky being the quarterback for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so start shortening those windows you're looking at. It doesn't have to be like from week 10 onwards, but I would shorten it a little bit and get a better idea at who's really producing for you, so you can look at those starting lineups, which is especially hairy when it comes to running back, because right now the running back scoring situation is pretty terrible. Like I
was about ready to say, can I ask you a question?
Is it going to be like Austin Eckler or Zeke Elliott?
It's going to be Austin Eckler, because my last one, but I'll go out of order here, was to I always have a start your studs kind of philosophy. That's how I play. But at the end of the day, your studs, you can't determine that by ADP loyalty anymore. It has to be who's produced. And looking at running back, Eckler fits exactly what you're talking about at receiver, at running back, where he is the RB28, but he has scored, 16.7 points in the last 3 games combined.
Yes.
It's tough because the 3 weeks before that, he was basically 20, if you round up on 19 a couple times. And it's fallen off a cliff. So it's like Eckler is a really tough guy to know what to do with, but people are going to be faced with an Eckler or a Javonte Williams, where you've got if Najee Harris is playing, Jaylen Warren decision. You have a Zach Moss decision, just kind of looking, Ezekiel Elliott decision, Alexander Madison, who's been, not very inspiring. He kind of fits in that same mold.
Well, Antonio Gibson, Brad Robinson, who's not practicing with a hamstring injury. I mean,
AJ Dillon, as long as Aaron Jones isn't playing, is the upside's not great, but you'll take
10 points, not 3 points.
You'll take 9-10 points. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. And when it comes to Austin Eckler, I'm probably looking to get off that however I can. I mean, these guys just scored 6 points against like the Patriots, who are on track to be the number 2 overall pick. It's not a good team.
And they're trying to be. They're trying to be the number 2 pick.
And I mean, Brandon Staley is actually coaching for his job right now. So it's not like they're going out there and the Chargers like, it's a lost season, we'll take a higher pick. No, they're trying to win games too. It's just terrible. And on the Austin Eckler subject, it just looks like it's it, man. Like it's not there anymore. And I would look to get off it.
He's not in our dynasty conversations later on, but Austin Eckler, if I were just to make up a category on the fly, it's like guys most likely to have reached the end of the line. Like Austin Eckler is kind of leading that charge right now.
Yeah, he's guys you traded to first for midway through the season and regret it in Dynasty right now.
Johnny sent us a hilarious tweet the other day where it's like a weekly competition between Eckler's rushing yards and the amount and the yardage total for a certain floss. And it's like 43. And it's like, it's hilarious. It's like my favorite thing to watch every week is if Eckler beats this floss. His rushing totals every week. And you look back at his rushes last week, I don't think he had any rushes over 5 or 6 yards. And most of them were like 2 yards, 1 yard, 3 yards, 4 yards. It is not a good situation right now.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know who the Patriots play this week, but I might lean Zeke over whoever the Chargers play just on a pure usage. I mean, Zeke might look less cooked than Eckler does right now, which is saying a lot.
Well, and like another guy this kind of applies to, And it's a real shame because this player is on the opposite end of that spectrum. He is just coming into his own as a player. However, the situation has been terrible for him this year, and that's Garrett Wilson. Like, he's the wide receiver 26, but are you telling me you want to start that guy?
Yeah.
In your playoffs? You look at a guy like Jaden Reed, who is a couple spots lower than him in season long. Christian Watson is out. We know that he's been on the field more. When Watson is out, Green Bay has already been looking to scheme the ball into his hands. The Green Bay offense clearly a more efficient and trustable unit than the Jets on the season. So it's like, yeah, I can see myself making that type of move, the Jaden Reed, or I'd have to pull up just a list of receivers, look below him. Like, I don't know, that Curtis Samuel, even though Samuel's floor is pretty low. Gosh, I don't know. It gets pretty tough there, but those are the type of guys. Like, I'm looking to get off of those Garrett Wilsons, the Austin Ecklers, the George Pickens, those type of guys. Throw that ADP loyalty out the window, because at the end of the day, you have to look at who's actually been your studs this year. But also, don't go overboard with it. I know the situation is really bad in New York, specifically the Giants. I can't just say in New York, but like, you can't. I don't see getting off of Saquon Barkley. Like, it's really tough to. You can't move that high up the totem pole, I don't think, with this.
No, definitely not. But I could see somebody arguing they needed to get off of a player like, 13th overall running back Gus Edwards.
Yeah.
I understand there's touchdown upside, but I might recommend getting off that with the Keaton Mitchell post-buy bump.
Yeah, for sure.
That brings me into my last point here, which is, and this isn't something I've done in past years, but I think it's pretty important this year with this type of football we're seeing played. I would start at least making some of my start set decisions based off of over-unders. This week alone, there's a 29.5 and a 30.5 over-under, which would be the two lowest over-unders in the last 15 years.
What's the one that's 30.5? I know that the 29.5 has got to be the Patriots Steelers game, because
I don't know if the other. I think it might be the Broncos game against the Chargers. I'd have to look to confirm it for you, but it's pretty terrible out there, and they're just game. Oh, it's the Jacksonville game because it's two backup quarterbacks playing.
Oh, yeah, and they're playing the Browns.
Yes. So those two games, super low over unders. And if you're like between, like, for instance, in the Browns game, if you're between Amari Cooper and Jordan Addison, I know I just told you to get off both those guys. I'm probably leading Jordan Addison because there's a higher over. And
you hear that, Eli? That advice is specifically for you.
Yes. Didn't mean to be for him, but it was. And it's just because you need points scored. Like, the total top 24 performances out of, and this includes quarterback, which is even funnier, out of the Chargers-Patriots games last week was one player, and that was Ezekiel Elliott. Like, these bad over-under games can really cost you. And they're getting really low because the NFL is like half backup quarterbacks right now. Mm-hmm. So they're just not scoring points. And you combine that with some of the cover two stuff we talked about earlier this year. Offenses are struggling at an all-time high. And you got to get off some of those players. Like, I wouldn't even blame some people if they were looking to get off Mahomes for some of these other quarterbacks who are performing better.
Man, that's tough. And that is, I think, where you are kind of towing a line, because you can get off of a good player and regret it in that situation. So yeah. I get it, but that one for me is a little bit tougher for me to.
No, don't do something crazy. Go look at like an over-under in a Cincinnati game and start Jake Browning over Patrick Mahomes. Now we're getting crazy. But if you're starting like Sam Howell over Patrick Mahomes, I can see the logic.
Yeah, but we do always talk about it's so valuable to have these elite quarterbacks. I know Mahomes hasn't been the elite numbers week in, week out through mostly no fault of his own, neither here nor there. But you could just get the bottom falling out of a guy like Sam Howell too. So you just have to keep that in mind.
As you score 0.2 points at one point this year.
And so Mahomes, the bottom falling out on Mahomes is still probably like 11 points.
I think since week 8, Mahomes is like the QB 18 though.
I mean, I believe it.
Yeah.
Shout out Sky Moore. All right, my last one here is to pay attention to your lineup throughout the week as the schedule gets chaotic, and not, lineup decisions, injuries, things like that. Obviously, first and foremost, as these games get more all over the place, I'll kind of outline that. Injury reports will come at different times. Obviously, make sure you're on top of who's playing, who's not. Goes without saying. But you look at week 15, there are 3 primetime games on a Saturday night. Week 16, which is the semifinal week, and Christmas week, is you have 1 game on Thursday, 2 games on Saturday, 10 games on Sunday, and then 3 on Monday. Week 17, pretty normal. Have to worry about a little bit less in championship week. So what does that all mean outside of just paying attention to injury reports, knowing that teams are on different practice schedules? Well, your matchups are going to unfold over days at a time in these weeks, as opposed to most weeks where you might have 1 or 2 guys, maybe 3, if it's a really good Thursday night matchup going on a Thursday. And then you may have that same thing on a Monday. But by and large, your matchups are going on all at once on Sundays, and you don't have that flexibility because you don't know where you stand in your matchup until at least after the noon games in almost every situation, unless somebody just really goes crazy on a Thursday or, whatever the case may be. Now, with the way that these next couple of weeks are set up, you may know, like, hey, I just had half my team play before Sunday. I really need some upside because these 3 guys, they did not play well. I'm really behind the 8 ball. You just be ready to make those lineup adjustments based on how that matchup is kind of unfolding over a couple of days span. And then also I'm always more cognizant of what types of starts I need in a playoff matchup. Am I the underdog? Do I need to shoot for upside? What does shooting for upside look like? In some situations, maybe not every team has this, but if I'm shooting for upside and I have don't make the decision based only on this. But if you're breaking a tie and you have a receiver who is tethered to your quarterback or another very comparable receiver, I might go with the guy tethered to my quarterback because if the quarterback, if that receiver has a good game, the quarterback is going to too. You're going to have higher upside. Whereas if I'm the favorite, I'm shooting for a floor. I am probably more looking to diversify my lineup to kind of insulate myself from that risk of 1 or 2 teams really kind of crapping the bed and really hurting my week.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. It's definitely important to look at that. And in the same vein, make sure you're putting your players that play earlier in your starter spots, like wide receiver, quarterback instead of flex.
Please don't burn your flex spots before Sunday unless you have 6 guys play. Do not burn those flex spots first.
Well, in the semifinals, and I think you mentioned it, which is week 15, there's like a triple header on Monday or a double header on Monday. Mm-hmm. So you just make sure you have those flex spots available, especially for some of these late game time decisions that become way more prevalent during this late in the season.
Yeah, and it may be a situation where if you're able to move your lineup around well enough, you have certain guys playing at certain times, you might be able to, you have one guy who's questionable. Okay, I've got another guy who I wouldn't mind starting playing in one of the other Monday games instead of having to make a harder choice on Sunday and playing a less desirable player because you just can't wait until that Monday night. Now, you may just be out of luck and but also give yourself that maximum flexibility. And also when it comes to your lineup and your team, I am 100% looking to mess with my opponent as much as possible. If they have a guy get hurt, they need to pick up a running back, they need to pick, pick up a quarterback. I am never doing this in October, September, whatever, but in the playoffs, I am blocking my opponent from picking up the best guy if I can. I am adding guys just to keep them away from my opponent.
Yeah. Oh no. Definitely recommend sniping your opponent and encouraging your league mates to snipe them as well if you don't have the roster space. Sometimes it comes down to a little politics, guys.
Hey, we're not promoting collusion here by any means.
It's not collusion if you say, "Hey, I noticed there's a quarterback available on waivers, and you can use them in the Sacco matchup."
All right, Dalton. Anything else on the playoffs before we kind of move on to more bigger picture dynasty stuff to close us out here?
Yeah, I was just going to say this. Dallas Goddard's back in the lineup, and Devontae Smith is way worse when Dallas Goddard's back.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't start him this week if I was a owner of Devontae Smith. Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah. The other side to that, however, is they play the Cowboys. You would expect that there are going to be a lot of points in that game. So if you're looking for a high over under game as opposed to a low over under game, like
That is fair. I
Devonta
would
Smith or
start
Amari Cooper.
Devonta Smith or Devonta Parker. I'm probably taking Devonta Smith.
I think regardless of the over under, I'm taking Devonta Smith over Devonta Parker there.
Just throwing it out there just in case anybody was really mulling that start sit.
No, but that is fair. You talk about looking at a more narrow window, but also you do have to keep things like that in mind. Injuries where it's like a certain guy is the whatever Smith is, maybe he's the wide receiver 12 over the last 4 weeks, but maybe that's not totally real because he did that without Dallas Goddard. Or like,
yeah,
I don't know what I don't even want to think about the Steelers anyway, but like Pat Freiermuth is back and playing now well, so maybe you downgrade Deontay Johnson, maybe even more than you already were because of Mitch Trubisky, because now Pat Freiermuth is back. He's playing. Turns out that when the Steelers want to throw the ball over the middle, he can also be a decent option at doing that.
Yeah, I would also just not start new Steelers, but I understand. Maybe Jalen Warren and Najee, but
I'm starting the running backs. I think if you've got the running backs, and unless you just have really good options, I think you just kind of have to ride it out with those guys. But
yeah,
I'm definitely looking to get away from the pass catchers if at all possible until Kenny Pickett is back. If Kenny Pickett is back and he's healthy, like I feel okay with Deontay or Pat Freiermuth
or Pickens. Yeah, there's something brewing at least a little bit with Pickett.
Yeah. All right. Without further ado, Dalton, let's get into Dynasty. And I teased this to our league mates in the chat. We're going to start this off with a little Cooper Kupp. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to call these guys either a stud, a dud, or a key piece. And did you do this with just next year in mind, or was it more like a multi-year view for you?
It was multi-year for most part. Some of these guys, you need a multi-year window, especially last one on that list. But
maybe not.
maybe not. But yeah, I looked at it in a multi-year. But obviously, like if they are a stud, only the next year matters.
Yeah, I don't know if we have any studs on this list. I'll be curious if we have any studs at all. Cooper Kupp, Dalton, is he a stud, dud, or key piece for you going forward?
Yeah, this one hurts. And in a league I'm competing for a championship in this year, I have Cooper Kupp, just a Dynasty league. He's a dud. I mean,
dud. Wow.
I
went key piece and thought that was going to be like, a little hot take.
Well, and I have that written for a little later. This year, he's completely unreliable. Yeah. I mean, he had a touchdown last week, which saved his day. But outside of that, he's a single-digit scorer every week he's been back, except for week 6 and week 5, his first 2 weeks back. I don't know if there's a nagging injury, but
probably he's had 2 injuries this year.
Yeah.
He missed most of last year with an injury, all lower body, and he tore his ACL earlier on in his career. Not to say that is still affecting him, but just we've talked about this with Adam Thielen, who by the way is still playing pretty well. It's not necessarily a death knell, but I just get more nervous as the lower body injuries pile up and as the age, of course, piles up alongside that.
Yeah, so that's the first concern is that I don't know where he's at. And again, that sciatic nerve situation seemed pretty scary from the medical personnel. So he's not somebody you can count on this year. And there is just so much influx with that Rams organization. Matt Stafford turns 38. And this is a guy who's had a career of injuries.
Stafford is really that old?
Yeah. This is a guy who's had a career of injuries. This is a guy who has, he almost missed last year on his injury the entire time. And this is a Rams organization.
He's 35. He's 35. He turns 36.
Turns 36. And this is a Rams organization where twice Sean McVay has been rumored to wanting to retire and spend time. I'm not saying any of that's going to happen, but there's so much influx. They need the draft capital, and they're going to probably have to eventually make a move at quarterback. And you're tying your prayer to a receiver who over the course of the last year and a half has been injured up and down, and then a quarterback who's been in the same boat. And then you have an ascending talent in Puka Nacua, who's done absolutely incredible things there. And it's no knock to Cooper Kupp, but part of his success was he was a monster target earner, and his targets are just significantly down over the course of the season. And I don't see how you can make a case that you're going to move forward with him and he's going to be a wide receiver 1 in your lineup over the course of the next year.
Yeah, so I have a stat for you from Matt Harmon that you may have seen that kind of goes right along to what you're saying with Kupp not being that target earner anymore. The percentage of Cooper Kupp's targets to come on designed plays, this is per fantasy points, and Matt Harmon's the one who put this out there. 2021, it was 12.3%. 2022, 23.7%. That was the unsustainable. That would have gone down, but it still would have been double digits for sure last season. This year, 4.2%. And then week 5, 19% of Puka Nacua's targets have come on design plays. So we are definitely seeing a changing of the guard. And then not just a changing of the guard, but we're seeing a drop-off in play from Cooper Kupp, most concerningly. I don't know if Matt Harmon has actually published this yet, but it was in his Discord, so I pulled it from Reception Perception. He charted a couple of Cooper Kupp games, weeks 5 and 12, which, by the way, week 5, one of those games where he did have a good scoring day, fantasy-wise. Both, he was fairly fresh off injury, but that's just kind of been a theme this year. So it's hard to really know if he can be better going forward, if he's healthy or not. But success rate versus man, 59.5%, versus zone, 77.3%. And then versus press, it's only 2 routes, so it is not worth it. Versus double coverage, only 6 routes, but 16.7%. And just for a point of reference, Wicks, the young rookie from Green Bay, who's a pretty exciting little player, he is better across the board than Cooper Kupp in his charted. This is not a good sample from Cooper Kupp over those couple of games. He's 28th in the NFL this year in yards per route run. Don't know if you saw this or not, but Puka Nacua, did you see the mic'd up between him and Puka?
I know Cooper Kupp doesn't like anime.
I was gonna say that seems like that is why you actually hate Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely another knock on Cooper Kupp. And again, it went underreported in the offseason, but Puka Nacua was having breakfast with Matt Stafford. And that's what got us Cooper Kupp elite. And I think maybe Cooper wasn't showing up to the breakfasts, and now he's not in the game as much. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it could also be he was historically good versus zone coverage and reception perception when he was dominant that last year and a half before he got hurt last year, and he's just not been that same guy. And at this point in a guy's career, when that kind of starts to go, does he ever get that fully back? I'm not sure. So I'm not going to go dud, but I am going to go key piece, which is a far cry from the stud that he was 6 months ago, if we have this conversation. I think he's more in that wide receiver 30 type of conversation. You're taking Zay Flowers, you're taking JSN, you're taking Jordan. All those rookies, you're taking over
all of them.
All 3 of those. Jordan
okay. I didn't know if we were just saying all rookies.
No. But Puka Nacua, obviously, you're taking over him. Tank Dell, I think at this point you're taking over Cooper Kupp, and then even I don't know, man. I don't even want to say the next thing that came to my mind because it's pretty bad. But yeah, tough times for Cooper Kupp. Move on to a guy who I think we're gonna feel more positively about, even though he may end up being in the same key piece category for both of us. That is Rashee Rice, Dalton. Are you going stud, dud, or key piece for Rashee Rice going forward?
I'm going key piece because I'm unsure what the Chiefs' plan is here, because we've already seen him be the best wide receiver on the team, and they're not letting him be a 90% snap share guy, which is hurting him. They're kind of still having him run a lot of Mickey Mouse routes. They're doing a lot of screen plays to him, and really
screen plays, slants, curls, almost all out of the slot. This is a guy whose ADOT was like 15 in college. If you show me a 15-yard target he's got this year, I will be surprised because I don't. I mean, maybe he surely has. I just don't recall. I don't
Yeah.
recall.
And I think the Chiefs are also a team where their long-term view of what the wide receiver position is going to be is probably going to be a pretty dynamic shifting of the room, whether it's in this draft or through free agency.
Dalton, it better be.
And I mean, if it's not, I'm probably not going to do any fantasy football or football-related content for a couple of years, because obviously that room's not working out. So they're going to bring more guys in, and it's still yet to be seen how he's going to play out in that, if they're going to continue to grow his role or just hamstring him.
Yeah, and it's like it's just tough to know because right now he's basically just a big flanker who we've kind of been saying all year we want to see him get more chances on the outside. Hopefully with these guys gone, this will happen, and hopefully these guys are gone, MVS and Justin Watson. Hopefully with those guys gone, that kind of opens up the opportunity to put Rice on the outside, just kind of see what he can do because like it is not impossible for Rashee Rice to find his way into that next tier as soon as next year if he does start moving into that role and he proves to be good at it. Like for all we know, this may be best for him on the development curve. It's probably not best for the Chiefs right now. For the player himself long term, this may be for the best because like you look at his reception perception, he's very good against zone, not great against man right now. And we kind of, even with it being a tough evaluation out of college because he was hurt, I think the evaluation on him has been pretty much right, where he is pretty raw against man coverage right now. And he just kind of needs some time there. Maybe this is for the best, and maybe he'll come back a more refined player in that respect next year. You would think maybe you want more reps, but against that, but neither here nor there. It's just hard to know because we don't know how good of a receiver the Chiefs are going to bring in, whether it is just they remake the room, but it's a lot of guys where you're thinking, okay, it's going to be kind of by committee, and then Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce are the top two. Or do they get a Michael Pittman, a Calvin Ridley, a T. Higgins, I don't know, trade for, player X here.
Yeah.
So it depends on how that shakes out. Just guys like a Zay Flowers, Puka Nacua, Jaden Reed, Josh Downs, like those guys are doing more of the wide receiver one type of stuff. Not all of them have all those productions are varying, but just from a route tree standpoint, those guys offer more safety going forward. But Rashee Rice definitely has a ceiling that I'm not sure. Maybe you can argue Zay Flowers and Puka Nacua, but I don't know. Like Rashee Rice, given situation and like when he has the ball, he just looks different than most everybody else on the NFL field.
Yeah, it's the same thing about Kadarius Toney. But the only other concern I have is that this organization has been probably one of the worst in the NFL at developing any wide receiver talent. And whether that's the case of the wide receiver they've drafted or if they can't do it well, that's been a pretty consistent theme going back to Alex Smith and Andy Reid. The only player that you can really pick on and say that we developed was Tyreek Hill, and I think he pretty much came in a ready product.
He's about ready to have more receiving yards as a rookie than Tyreek Hill. I think that's coming up in the next couple of weeks.
I did see that. Yeah, which that's exciting, but I think Tyreek Hill was on a limited snap share play with Alex Smith. So
I mean, limited snap share here.
Yes,
but anyway, all right. Next guy, Dalton, I think is very, very interesting, and that is Tajay Spears. Stud, dud, or key piece? I'm going to lead this one off. I'm going stud. I'm going stud for Tajay Spears next year, and then hopefully for a year or two after that, knees willing. This guy, like, if Derrick Henry is not on this team, which I'd be a little surprised if Derrick Henry was, but also I have probably thought that for a little while now, so don't want to get too ahead of my skis here. But if Derrick Henry is not on this team, I really want to say something crazy, so I'll just say top 15 running back next season from a fantasy perspective if there's no Derrick Henry, and I am going to end up with him on almost all of my teams because this guy's just so good, man. Like, just changes directions. He's just so smooth, glides all over the field, got the pad level you want. There's just nothing he can't do. He's a 3-down type of back. He's obviously a smaller guy, so he's not a guy you just want to bang between the tackles all game, but he can do that because he is so shifty. He's so quick with his cuts. He finds the right lane almost every time. Like, just give this guy the lead role next year and see what happens. Please, Titans, please. Like, if you do nothing else this offseason, let that happen. And let Derrick Henry go to a good team. Let Tajay Spears spread his wings. He's 12th in yards per touch, and 23rd in breakaway runs. Maybe more impressively, he's 14th in total evaded tackles this year as a part-time player. Just kind of shows you what type of player he is. He's first in juke rate. Like, this guy, just one of my favorites. Even going back to college, one of my favorites. He's 4th in the NFL in yards created per touch at 4.58. Last week, we got a 2/3 of the snaps type of game from him. 20 touches, 88 yards. Like, I think if that keeps happening this year, more exciting days than that are ahead, and more exciting days are ahead next year and the years to come, as long as this guy can stay healthy.
Yeah, I have him as stud as well. Mike Vrabel's always been a guy who wants to use a workhorse back. Looks like they have slotted him in. He's the first player to get consistent work behind Derrick Henry. Going back to people we were excited about, like Deion Lewis, even if you remember 4 years ago, people were excited about him working behind Derrick Henry, and it turned out to not be a thing. Last week, with Derrick Henry being injured for a little bit, the only running back to see any other snaps was Tajay Spears.
I think this is Ian Hart that's put that on Twitter, so I hope this is true. He's the only other running back on the team that touched the ball this year besides Derrick Henry.
I would also believe that. This Titan organization is probably going to be in a rebuild for a while. They don't look the greatest, but if they go out and they draft like 1 or 2 offensive linemen in in a draft that is deep with them, he could come in on a very run-heavy, defense-oriented team where he's just getting the same work we've seen Derrick Henry get. Maybe not 30 touches a game, but 20, 22.
Well, and the nice thing with him, he's I'm not saying he's gonna be Derrick Henry, but he's not gonna be game script dependent like Derrick Henry, which has always been scary when the Titans have not been as good the last year and change. Like, this guy catches passes pretty frequently.
Yeah. So he's in my stud category. I put my money where my mouth is. Start of the season, traded a future first for him in a different league. So like, I'm definitely a full believer in the Tajay Spears experience. I think he's somebody that's really going to continue to get better with the years.
Yep. Oh boy. I hope the knees can allow this to happen for a couple of years, because he's still only 22. He's still really young. Just one of my favorite backs to watch already in the NFL. Love him. All right. DeAndre Swift, Dalton. This is a guy that I was higher on than you in the preseason, but even I would have never seen the type of year that Swift has had this year coming. I'm trying to pull it up here. He is the RB14 despite basically never scoring a 1-yard touchdown, which is kind of hard to do. And that's also with him getting 0.8 points in week 1 because he hardly played, but also he's been very healthy this year, knock on wood. Going forward for DeAndre Swift, stud, dud, or key piece? And maybe what you think of him depends a lot on if you think he's going to be back in Philly or not.
I put key piece, but there's a concerning trend here with running backs after their rookie year, where there are
their rookie scale contract.
Yeah. Where there are a few who have done well, but a lot of them just kind of become Jags and then get beat out by a different rookie on a contract on that team. I don't think he's going to be back in Philly, just with the way the Eagles build their team. They don't pay up for they don't pay for linebackers. They don't pay for running backs. They run like fantasy Twitter wants every team to run. And so if he's not back in Philly, that's a concern. And then it just depends where he runs up. He's still not done well between the tackles this season. I looked it up, and his success rate between the tackles is 32nd in the NFL. It's just not his MO. And he's playing behind one of the best offensive lines.
It's probably the best run blocking offensive line in the NFL, especially between the tackles. That is where Jason Kelce is getting to the second level and pummeling linebackers to clear out space.
And so it's really dependent. you're probably not going to get a lot trading for him from anybody who's like, well, I don't know where he's going to end up. So
Yeah.
you're going to hold him. He's going to be a piece on your roster. And you just really have to hope that he gets a shot at another team.
I mean, you got to hope he's back in Philly. I think you got to hope he's back in Philly. If he's back in Philly, I think he's borderline stud.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I'm slotting him in at key piece and waiting for free agency to shake out and see who ends up where.
Same, because not that I have any reason to like any insider knowledge to think this, but I would just be surprised if he's back in Philly because he's good enough to where by running back standards, he will get some kind of money. And it just doesn't make sense for Philly to be the team that does that to me. Like,
yeah, this feels like a real David Tepper at the Carolina Panthers gives him 3 years, $24 million.
Well, it just did
exactly
that
what he gave Miles Sanders. Back. Yes, exactly. That's why I'm saying that. I don't know if he ends up on a bad team, he's a dud probably.
Like the team that needs a running back so clearly is the Vikings, but I don't really find him to be a scheme fit there. So I don't know. I'm not going to try to predict where he's going to end up, but I did this exercise thinking he's probably not back in Philly. If he is, borderline stud, but just kind of with my thought process now, I'm going key piece. And for all the reasons you said, this year kind of feels like found money to me, where it's like when he got traded for whatever it was, a 7th round pick, It was like, oh my God, like this guy went from the RB5 in Dynasty probably to, am I going to have to drop him in 6 weeks into the season? And then it turns out that he's a borderline RB1, probably if you look at points per game, like I'm looking right now, he's maybe only a couple spots lower. Like, and again, this is without ever scoring 1-yard touchdowns, basically, except for once or twice this season. So he could easily be having a better year if they just didn't have the QB sneak every time. So I'm with, like, there's not really anything you can do if you trade him, if he's going somewhere else. It's like, I don't think you're going to get anybody to bite because he was in what is a perfect situation for him. And I've talked about this a lot this year, where it's like even though Jalen Hurts is banged up, you have that threat of the read option where he has to hold the linebacker. Swift doesn't have to make those reads like he does with Jared Goff at quarterback, and he can just do what he does best, which is just go run. Like, you don't have to make these reads. You don't have to do anything complicated. You just bounce it to the outside. You make guys miss, and he still looks very good. It's not like this is a guy where he's getting towards the end of his rookie contract and you're like, oof, like I'm worried about it falling off. Like, I'm not worried about the skill stuff falling off. I just worry what this looks like in a different situation. And we also have to keep in mind, now there's still a month left in the regular season. I don't think anybody would have predicted that DeAndre Swift would have played every game through 13 weeks. So we just have also had a bill of incredible health for Swift this year.
But the thing is, it's probably even a hard sell from that side. He got probably the best offensive situation, didn't get injured. He's still the RB14 in points per game. And you're probably about at his ceiling unless he goes somewhere and the coaching staff figures it out. Like, the only place that could be better for him was if CMC suddenly never plays football again. He ends up in San Francisco.
Actually, I have bad news for you. He is the RB14 in total points. He's the RB21 in points per game this year. So a little bit lower than I thought. Shockingly behind Tony Pollard in points per game this year.
Oh, wow.
I'm feeling worse as I continue to talk about this.
That's terrible.
Behind Kenneth Walker, which that isn't shocking. Behind, oh my God. He's behind Zach Moss in points per game. Points per game. So, like, Zach Moss I know Swift scored 0.8 in week 1, but Zach Moss scored 0.2 in one of those JT weeks and then 2.6 in another one. So, like, yeah, I think he's a key piece. There's really nothing I'm assuming you're not trading him right now if you've got him. And then you just have to hope he ends up in an okay spot. And I think that just kind of is what is with Swift. And we're going to end this, I think, Dalton, on a very negative note. Mr. Quentin Johnston. We're gonna give Quentin this little drop here.
Stop pooping.
I mean, good Lord, man. Like, he's a dud, right?
Yeah, no, he's a dud, but you can't do anything about it.
No, like, oh my God. You have to pray he has a good game in this last month, and then you sell like immediately whenever your trades open back up again in your dynasty league. You are selling. You are getting out, and you can't wait too close to the draft because that's when the pick values, are going up, and maybe somebody will be like, "Oh, I'll give you a high second for this reclamation project because I was a believer and I still believe." And I think that's what you're praying for if you have him at this point.
He's firmly in Nelson Aguilar, Hakeem Butler
Listen
territory.
to this. He's a pure X receiver. That is the only nice thing I can say about him, and it's not really even nice.
I mean, clearly the guy's in his own head with some of the drops.
Yes.
That's clear.
Yes, but also, we talked about a lot, the clap attack stuff. We got the victory lap from whoever it was on Twitter, like, oh, but I don't see any clap attack on this catch in the corner of the end zone training camp.
Yeah.
I can't find that guy on Twitter now. I wonder why.
Yeah, just remember training camp videos are something to not trust.
Yes.
Quentin Johnston is what most pre-draft analysts said, which was he was raw. He has all the physical traits, but he's very raw, and he lacks refinement in all of the important categories like catching the ball, running
routes.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear his reception perception breakout?
Is it sad?
So 38.9% success rate versus man and 50.9% success rate versus zone. Those are both the lowest scoring among rookie running backs that Harmon, or rookie receivers, that Matt Harmon has charted in reception perception this year. If you want to hear a very depressing line from that profile, here it is. Quote, he's in the Justin Hunter, Devin Funchess, Terrace Marshall, and Jalen Reagor category. Excuse me? and Harmon just did a podcast on reception perception, I think maybe literally today or like a couple days ago, where his co-host asked him, has anybody ever bounced back from such poor scores against man and zone? And Matt just goes, no, not really. So like it feels written at this point on this dude. And I hate to say that because even as his biggest, some of his biggest haters coming out, we can admit the raw tools, they are there. It's just, man, if he doesn't have every other deficiency that you wouldn't want out of a receiver.
Yeah, and he's also been very unfortunate that he has had to be the one for times on this team, or even the wide receiver two. Like he's
been the two for about a month now.
Yeah, and that's very unfortunate for his development because he has not gotten the opportunity to work into these things. He's just being asked to do them, and that means judgments are written much quicker on him as a player. I would not be surprised if the Chargers go into the draft and draft somebody over him, and if they don't, they more than likely bring somebody in over him because Keenan Allen is hitting his 32, 31-year-old season. Mike Williams is on the second ACL tear. Austin Eckler looks cooked, and the Josh Palmer, he's a fine wide receiver too, but it's not like he's going to be the one winning the games.
Yeah, Keenan Allen will be 32 when the season starts next year, which like Keenan Allen, he's still awesome. If he's still there, he's kind of to the point where I think he's going to be – you just have to kind of keep saying he's going to be good till he's not.
Yeah.
But you got to have something past that. And I am assuming that Brandon Staley will not be the coach of this team next season. I don't know if the general manager would go out the door with him or not. If that does happen, you always in Dynasty, you just kind of have to keep track of that kind of stuff because when a new GM, new decision makers like that come in the building, we don't know we know what they probably think of Johnston because we've seen him play. But the guys that believed in him to be the second receiver off the board ahead of Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, etc., are probably not going to be there next year, or at least the coach won't be.
Yeah. So yeah, it's firmly in the dud category. More than likely a taxi option for you. I would take a second for him, like
Yes.
in a minute. If there's still believers in your league, I would probably. I just see it working out for him. I don't even know if he makes it. He'll probably make his full rookie contract in Los Angeles, but it gets pretty hairy from there.
If he got trade blocked in our league right now, where you are in complete rebuild mode, you have 1 million picks, you're looking to trade probably for guys who are reclamation projects that you believe in. Now, this is a guy who you don't believe in, but what would your highest offer be for Quentin Johnston in your context right now?
I'll tell you right now, I have Dontavian Wicks, and I wouldn't trade Dontavian Wicks for Quentin Johnston.
Oh, 100%. I wouldn't either.
I mean, that's tough. I like Salvin Ahmed.
Would you give up a 3rd-round pick for him?
If I knew it was going to be a late 3, yeah.
No, not late 3, because at that point, like, you just got to hold. If
I would give Kadarius Toney for Quentin Johnston.
Oh, we have come full circle on that one. All right, for non-SFFL folks, thank you so much for listening to episode 128 of the Half Point Per Podcast. Give us a follow, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Half Point Per Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube. The link to all those things will be in the show notes. The show is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, all of that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much again for listening. And we will talk to you guys again next week with what I think will be a very fun and exciting playoff preview. And for those of you waiting for the SFFL playoff preview, we've got a little something here. Not too much, but it is at least worth talking about. Dalton, look at these, from esteemed journalist Jim Jimerson himself. Look at these league standings in our league right now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams vying for 2 playoff spots. So I thought it would just be worthwhile to go through, we kind of lay out the scenarios real quick, and then we can make predictions. Who's gonna get those last 2 spots? First, we have Troll, Mr. Noah Berry himself, at 8-5 with a buttload of points. All he has
second
to do,
most.
Yeah, second most. All he has to do is win, and even if he loses, he just the only way he's missing is if La and Trejo and myself, if all 3 of us win, which is technically possible. So he technically could still miss, but if he loses, he just needs one other team to lose, and he is in there. And that's not even including Noah, who, even if he wins, Noah Grant, if he wins and he is 8-6, he's not getting in over Troll. And that point total probably, although he's not as far behind as others, but it would have to be like a crazy 180 versus 75 type of week there. You have myself next at 5th, who cannot make a start-sit decision to save his life. Shout out Calvin Ridley. Shout out Zach Moss. Shout out Jalen Warren. Shout out James Conner. I love all of you so much. All I have to do is win, and I'm in as well. If I lose, I am a little bit obviously I'm at the mercy of Law and Trejo as well, but also I am going to outpoint total Law, and I at least have a little bit of a cushion on Trejo in that.
But Noah could very quickly catch you.
But Noah could very easily win and catch me there. However, Noah plays Noah this week, right? It's Troll versus Noah Grant this week. So one of those 2 is not winning, and that is where it gets a little bit interesting there. And then you have Trejo at 8-5, who's playing Eli, who technically hasn't clinched if you just go by the league telling us who's clinched and not. But it's I don't even want to have to go through the scenario that would have to play out for Eli to not make it, because it is a lot.
Law, Aaron, you, and Troll have to win, and then everybody has to outscore Eli.
Law would have to score like 250 points, and Eli
Yes.
scores
0. He'd have to score 0. Yeah.
So it's not happening. Eli is in. For Trejo, he either needs to beat Eli or he needs Noah to lose. He needs Law to lose or me to lose. He's in that 6th spot right now. He needs 2 of those teams to lose and fall behind him. And preferably, like, he can't be in a points battle with Trill because he's not. No one's winning a points battle with Trill at this point. And then J Law, this is where it really gets complicated. He has to not complicated. It's actually quite easy. It's just a lot that has to happen for J Law, who, by the way, has scored like 300 and some points the last 2 weeks. So he is making a late push to make this interesting here. Just beat Brian last week, who changed his team name to the North Plaza Chargers. Shout out Brian for that, for embracing the joke there. Law needs to win. He needs to outscore Trejo and Noah, or have them both lose. Like, if Trejo and Noah both lose and Law wins, he's in. If they both win, well, if Noah wins, doesn't matter. If Trejo wins, Law has to score like 90 something points more than Trejo. So basically, Law needs everyone around him to lose to basically guarantee that he's going to get in. If we look at the actual matchups this week, one advantage, I'm going to completely jinx myself here. One advantage that I do have is I'm playing Rowdy, who is not a team looking to win. With that said, Rowdy is not as low scoring as like you and Brad, so anything is possible there. But I at least have an easier matchup on paper than Trejo, who's got Eli, and then Law, who has Juan Pablo, who, shout out Juan, man. His defense is on point this year.
And sometimes that's all you could ask for.
And it's not like he's scoring a disrespectful amount of points. He's still outscoring Law. He's not that far behind Trejo, but he is second in the league and much worse than, I think, probably 8th in points right now. So yeah, he's definitely living right, which is just how it goes. That's how it goes in fantasy when you don't have a doubleheader league, which, we do not. So with all that said, Dalton, who are your picks to make the final 2 playoff spots?
Well, let's just go how this is looking. I think Noah beats Troll.
I mean, I'm sorry, final 3. It's 3 playoff spots still up for grabs.
So I think let's get the easy ones out of the way.
Okay.
I think Juan Pablo does it. I think he shocks.
You think he beats Law?
I think he beats Bavaria. He's good. Secures first round bye.
Why didn't you say Juan's team name?
Because there's a J in it, but it's not a J. Secures first round bye. Law's out.
Okay.
The Raccoons lose to the Skunks. Terrible outcome.
What really hurts the Raccoons is they're starting. Well, let me look. Who
they're starting Justin Herbert, so we'll start there.
Well, he's also okay. He still empty in his flex. Trejo's still refusing to name a flex after Ramondre Stevenson goes down. He will be choosing between probably Kenneth Gainwell, Miles Sanders, and Deontay Foreman.
Not good.
Maybe Jalen Guyton. Maybe like KJ Osborne and Prey. Maybe, Gainwell doesn't play till 7:20. Osborne 3:25. Maybe he's trying to wait and see kind of what the point totals are looking like at that point, which is smart. I would do that too.
So we have the Skunks losing. Now they need to win some tiebreakers. We have you winning. I think that one's pretty easy. Then we have Noah, the Tanks, winning, beating Troll, which then moves Noah into the 6th spot, kicks the Raccoons and Bavaria out, and solidifies the playoffs.
And this also, and I think this is exactly how it's going to go, by the way. And that would also put Troll Noah at the 5 spot. So we'd have me at the 4, Troll at the 5, and Noah Grant, the Toledo Tanks, at the 6 in this scenario. And I do think when I was looking at this yesterday, that is how I think it's going to play out. However, like that Trejo Eli matchup and the Noah's matchup is very much, I don't want to say 50-50, but it's like 55-45 in both those cases.
Yeah. So they're the swing games.
Well, and Law and Juan, like those two, like all 3 of those are very close. So it's going to be a day of calculating points, calculating tiebreakers. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it very much. As long as I'm not involved, as long as I don't lose to Rowdy and have to be involved in trying to add up my points, then I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's going to be a crazy end. I have a matchup with the North Plaza Chargers in games that don't matter. So, and Ty plays the worst team in the league, the second worst team in the league. So he's all but secured first round bye.
Yeah.
Not that he didn't already.
Yeah. So just go ahead and send Ty's $100 back to him now.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, that is going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back with a playoff preview next week.